Our final speaker today is Morrie Pongratz. Morrie grew up on a farm outside of O'Neill, Nebraska, where he attended a one-room schoolhouse until 8th grade. He went on to high school and played in the high school championship football team. Sports has been a big part of Morrie's life. From there, Morrie went to Creighton University in Omaha, where he triple majored in math, physics, and philosophy, and did a minor in theology. Then he went on to get a PhD from the University of Maryland and began a career with sounding rockets. Morrie and his wife moved to Los Alamos in 1973. Morrie worked with EG&G and Los Alamos National Laboratory for over 45 years. He was a four-time recipient of the Lanold Distinguished Performance Award. Morrie has served on the Los Alamos County Council for 7 terms. He served on the Los Alamos School Board. He was named a Living Treasure of Los Alamos in 2011. And he has volunteered as a PA announcer for Los Alamos High School Athletics for over 30 years. And he was named to the Los Alamos High School Athletic Hall of Fame in 2014. Morrie is a member of Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish. He's a lector and Eucharistic minister. He's a member of the board of directors for the Kiwanis Club, the Los Alamos Public Schools Foundation, the Los Alamos Faith and Science Forum, the Laboratory Retiree Group, and the Juvenile Justice Advisory Board. And our appropriately titled final talk is The End of Everything.
Thank you, and I begged a slight modification. We're going to start out with a TED Talk, and then we'll go to my PowerPoints. So thanks, Liz. And I want to express my gratitude for being invited to speak. It's a real honor to be with this distinguished group of folks, and we're going to hear about the end. And I very much appreciate that we were able to show Katie Mack's talk, because I think it sort of sets a contrast between the cosmologists, 90% of whom are atheists, and those of us who are Catholics and see something beyond that. And again, Dan and I got into this based on first of all, on Katie Mack's book, and then Dan reads proliferously, and I haven't finished my first coloring book yet, so I have to rely on him for finding things. So what I found was that Katie Mack gave a very brutally frank talk. The universe, everything is dying. Hot, dense plasmas, expansion is speeding up. That most likely scenario is just this heat death, and that's a funny description of it. Some people don't like that notation, where everything just sort of falls apart. And it was the death of the universe more profound than our own human death. And the thing that sort of challenged her was that there's no legacy, and our existence will not matter. And so we're looking for some way to carry on, and I think that we as Catholics with faith know that there is a way to carry on. And this is from Mark, but in those days after the suffering, the sun will be darkened. So in the Bible it tells us that, the end is coming and it's going to go. So in our Los Alamos Faith and Science Forum, when we give a talk, we're supposed to say what we're talking about and the so what of it. So I start here with, Thomas Aquinas taught us that God maintains everything in existence at every moment, and I had a Jesuit giving me, I forget whether it's theology or philosophy, the vision he used was God is holding us by a little string, and he gives us existence. And so since we're finite beings, we could be gone in a flash. And I'm just did you ever wonder how that might happen? Because it is, as a scientist, you know, you don't deny it, but you wonder exactly what's the mechanism. How's God going to do that? And so I've stolen from her book, The End of Everything. So we'll discuss the obvious, the big crunch, heat death, and mainly the relationship to faith comes into what is called vacuum decay. So there are, she enumerates a number of possible endings to everything. The big crunch, you know, everything was going apart. Gravity's pretty strong, got a lot of time. Everything comes back together. Heat death, that's also known as the big freeze. And it's just a total disaster, you know, where everything gets, you can't see lights anymore. And to some extent, her happiness was that we are sort of blessed here when we can see this. You know, the earlier people didn't know it, and, you know, millions of years from now, they won't be able to see even the stars. So we're blessed in a way. The Big Rip, you know, expansion of the universe is just going to tear things apart. I'll go into this a little later. And vacuum decay. Now, there's also in her book a discussion of a bounce. You know, it's everything come back together, bounce, and then come apart again. So let's go to the big crunch. You know, the expansion of the universe started out with a big bang. And Hubble, you know, measured things, found that, and for most of my life, we thought everything was expanding. And then along come these guys, and they did some measurements, and that's not quite right. Gravity is powerful, long range, a lot of time. So if gravity wins, the expansion reverses, and everything smooshes together in a catastrophic big crunch, and that's very messy, very, very high entropy process. And as a matter of fact, Katie says that the blue shifted radiation from this will burn the surfaces of stars. And she also says it's not likely. Now, a word about heat death. Since 1998, we know that expansion is speeding up, at least locally. It seems to be speeding up. And they're still working on what the Hubble constant really is. So is that the cosmological constant? And you know, Einstein threw that in there. He wanted, that was a case where in fact, we heard a discussion of this earlier, where our own sort of philosophical inclinations sometimes mess up our science. You know, Einstein sort of thought we had a steady universe, so he put in the cosmological constant so that things could stay steady, but we now have something called dark energy, and it looks like a pressure term on space, and it's spreading things out. And a few more words about heat death. The expansion continues forever, increasing annihilation, inexorable decay, a long fade into darkness. That was Katie's words. And we won't be able to see other galaxies. We'll probably be gone by then because the sun will have gotten us. And it's sort of social distancing. And I stole this from Katie's book, you know. Things just spread out, you won't be able to see anything. Now, the Big Rip, on the other hand, is social distancing on steroids. The cosmic inflation speeds up, and you know, the fabric of space expands like a web, you know, a net. Things get farther apart, galaxies are shifted way out there. Even the planets will be shifted away from the sun. parts of the earth will be shifted apart. So, you know, what I was thinking here is that body parts will elongate, and it was my chance to be 6 feet tall, except then I realized that the tape measure would expand also. So that shot that down. Atoms will rip apart. So the big rip is pretty catastrophic. Now we'll go to vacuum decay and the Higgs field. Now we heard about symmetry this morning, and Stephen knows way more about symmetry breaking than I do. But as a result of the electroweak symmetry breaking, we got this Higgs field. And it determines a number of fundamental constants. And someone was talking about, you know, the paper, I think it was Steve, about, you know, the anthropomorphic nature of the fundamental contents. And, you know, the charge on the electron, mass of particles. And the standard model says that the Higgs field, the Higgs vacuum, is not stable. It's in a metastable state. Uh-oh. And so here's from Katie's book a picture of the potential here, and this is the value of the Higgs field, and the fielding is that it's in a false, a temporary lower state, and that either through fluctuations or by tunneling, it could go to a true vacuum, and that would be catastrophic, a high energy event. And you know, at one time there was concern that some of those experiments at CERN needed to be stopped because they were going to trigger us out of this metastable state and into the true vacuum of the Higgs field. And so there would, the theory says that there will be a bubble nucleation. If a small part of the universe by chance reached that more stable vacuum, that bubble would expand very rapidly, and the universe as we know it would go away, because the mass will go away, and then that's of course my way to get back to my playing weight, but it wouldn't last very long. So that's the question then is, okay, there's a bubble going to form. Is the bubble heaven? And I don't know. I just thought I'd throw that out because it, you know, it has some of the features of heaven. So we already went through that. And that one is the most interesting to me theologically, because it happens instantaneously. That's how God snaps off this little string that's keeping me as a being, and we're gone. And then I saw this, it's God flipping a coin. Not sure if it's a good thing. He keeps saying, okay, best 2 out of 3, and then he has this bada boom, there goes the universe. The next slide is just for when we release these view graphs, the references to the vacuum decay. A word about the bounce. Neil Turek says that cosmic inflation was not a one-off event, and it could all come back together. We could have a bounce. And what's interesting is they're saying that inflation is just a theory, and I think that's true, because it was some way we got all this smoothness in a very rapid inflation. And they actually apparently is a way by measuring the polarization of gravitational waves that you might be able to resolve some of these questions. So in summary, the big crunch says everything comes back together. Big crunch over here. This is the scale of the universe over time. Big Bang. And you know, what's interesting is the Matra, a Jesuit, I have to be kind to the Jesuits.
I don't think he was.
Oh,
I think he was a diocesan priest. He was a diocesan priest, not a Jesuit. Lamech.
oh, okay.
So you
Well,
don't
then
have to-
my plug for the Jesuits goes away. So anyway, he came up with this, and it fit, you know, what was being observed very nicely. So there's acceleration going on now. Right about here we go, maybe, you know, for a long time, it was, when I was, you know, studying, it was going to be a big crunch, or all going to come back here. One of the options, of course, is the great big rip, the social distancing on steroids. And then the sad one, of course, is the big freeze. Big crunch, heat death, big rip, vacuum decay, and bounce. Now, just to close, you know, John Polkinghorne, a Anglican priest who is a physicist, is well aware of this. He gave a sermon on the end of the world, and talks about the gloomy predictions. And what he brings up, of course, is that we, as Christians, as Catholic Christians, have something more to look forward than the end of the universe. And Jesus dealt with that in Mark, and someone had this quote on earlier, not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. And the theory is that if you and I matter to God once, and we do, then we must matter forever and ever. And that's it. I thank you for your attention.
Questions for Morrie? Yeah.
Vicki?
What about environmental degradation? Isn't that happening on a much larger scale and we should worry about that? Long before the sun burns out, we're going to be toast.
Yeah, that is
Worrying about the wrong stuff.
that is the end of the earth, not the end of the universe.
Well,
And
I
for all that we care, it probably does that.
In 100,000 years, humans will have encompassed the entire galaxy. Sorry.
Powered by Tesla. Any other questions?
And again, thank you very much.